Willkommen an der Westküste von Wales. Wir reisen gleich in den Nationalpark von Pembrokeshire und besuchen dort ein Ökodorf mit Modellcharakter.
Modellcharakter deswegen, weil die Community in diesem Ökodorf namens Brid Mawr vollkommen energieautark ist. Der gesamte Strom und auch die Wärme werden selbst produziert durch Wasserkraft, Windkraft und Solarenergie. Und gerade in Zeiten der Teuerung von Strompreisen und Energiepreisen ist das ein wunderbares Beispiel, dem viele vielleicht noch folgen möchten. Auch ist die Community bei Lebensmitteln fast vollständig autark. Herzlich willkommen in Wales und jetzt begeben wir uns nach Brid Mawr.
Das Ökodorf Brid Mawr wurde vor ca. 25 Jahren ins Leben gerufen. Rund 20 Menschen leben hier auf einem über 34 Hektar großen Gelände, in einem ehemals verlassenen kleinen Dorf, das aus traditionellen walisischen Steinhäusern besteht. Wir werden mit 5 Mitgliedern der Gemeinschaft sprechen, die sich zum Beispiel dem Obst- und Gemüsegarten für die Selbstversorgung widmen. Neuerdings wird hier auch regenerativer Getreideanbau betrieben. In Brid Mawr werden viele Haus- und Nutztiere gehalten, darunter Hühner, Enten, Ziegen, Pferde, Hunde und Katzen. Die große Besonderheit in Brid Mawr, nämlich die Energieautarkie, wird ebenfalls in unseren Interviews zur Sprache kommen. Am Rande von Brid Mawr besuchen wir außerdem ökologische Rundhäuser, die kaum von der Landschaft zu unterscheiden sind. Viel Freude mit diesem Film über das walisische Ökoprojekt.
So I feel really lucky and really grateful to be at Brid Mawr. I came here in May 2021 as a long-term volunteer. I answered an advert on Facebook and had an interview and was offered a 6-month long-term volunteer placement. and here I am over a year later, and I haven't left yet.
What made you stay?
What made me stay was I really enjoy the landscape. I really enjoy being part of a community that is focused on sustainability, and I really enjoy the people that live here. I've made some great friends. I've made some really good friends, and that's why I'm still here.
How important is the aspect of independency, self-sufficiency, autonomy regarding your stay in Brithia Mar?
Do you mean my personal autonomy?
Your personal. How important is it for you that you have your own electricity here, being disconnected, off-grid?
Okay, so off-grid.
Having mainly your own food from the garden and doing kind of growing that with your own hands.
Yeah. So for me, the reason I'm here is all about sustainability. I tried to live a sustainable life in a conventional lifestyle. And even though I did everything I possibly could, I was still using 1.7 planets. And so coming here has allowed me to use less than one planet's worth in my lifestyle. So growing my own veg, having off-grid power, all of that kind of stuff is really important to me, and that's what's motivated me to come here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what are your duties?
So the advert we replied to on Facebook was for growers in one of the gardens. So there are two gardens and then another main crop area and then some polytunnels, and we were asked to grow veg in the top garden, which my husband and I have done for the last just over a year. But on top of that, we do other things. So we are now responsible for looking after the chickens and the ducks. We also cook meals for the whole community. That can be up to 20 people on a wood-fired stove. So that's a bit challenging, but very enjoyable. We have also looked after some of the children so that their parents can get on with things. We've helped out with the wheat growing. So, you know, if there's a job that needs doing and somebody asks us to do it, we're just really happy to get on and do it.
Wie wir im Gespräch hörten, konnte die freiwillige Helferin Sarah Jones ihren ökologischen Fußabdruck seit ihrem Aufenthalt in Brithia Mar enorm reduzieren. Nick Ward lebt bereits seit Jahren als Biogärtner und fester Bewohner hier. Er erzählt uns, wie sich dieser Lebensstil auf seine 3 Kinder ausgewirkt hat. Für ihn sind der Kontakt zur Natur und frische Nahrungsmittel aus dem Garten die wichtigste Grundlage eines guten Lebens.
My name's Nick Ward. Came here about 6 years ago. We were living in Somerset in yurts, looking for land, but visited friends who were living at Tirispidor, which is our sister community in the valley. And we fell in love with the area, with the mountain, the woods nearby, the stunning coastline, and the feeling that, you know, there was wilderness here. It was still wild elements, which really appealed to us. We were hoping to set up a community with friends at some point, so it made sense to join an existing community to see about growing food on a bigger scale, preserving food over the winter, and what works and what doesn't work in community, you know, lessons to be learned. So we came and stayed nearby so we could do our week's volunteering, and then we did a month living in a bell tent, and then we started our joining process, which is a year. And at that time we put our yurts up and we're in the woods living in yurts. Yeah, and so I love it here. I can't imagine any reason why I would want to leave. Unfortunately, I split up with my wife, so she's moved back to Glastonbury, where we came from. So my children come and visit me one week out of 4. Yeah, so I have 3 children, a son and 2 daughters. My 2 daughters love coming back here. They definitely think about it as home. They were here for a long time when they were younger. And they don't help me in the garden that much, but they can see what we're doing and that they'll get a flavour of it. And they're certainly not, you know, they're used to the tools that we use. They're used to a lot of the jobs that we do. They don't really want to get involved too much at the moment, but that's because of the age that they are.
Die Menschen von Brythia Mawr befassen sich sehr stark mit der Biolandwirtschaft. Die verschiedenen Gärten, das Feld und die Folientunnel werden das ganze Jahr über bewirtschaftet. In Sachen Lebensmitteln ist die Gemeinschaft zu ungefähr 95% selbst versorgt. Äpfel, Beeren, Feigen und anderes Obst verströmt einen aromatischen Duft unter der Augustsonne. Bei diesem Anblick müssen wir an Avalon denken, das fruchtbare Apfelland aus den alten keltischen Erzählungen. In Brythia Mawr herrscht ein gemäßigtes maritimes Klima. Viele Kulturpflanzen wachsen überall in Europa, auch in der dunklen Jahreshälfte. Zum Beispiel Lauch. Der Lauch taucht seit dem 7. Jahrhundert in der walisischen Literatur auf und gilt hier als Nationalgemüse.
We are totally self-sufficient in quite a lot of veg. We're like 95% self-sufficient in potatoes and tomatoes and squash and peas and carrots and like all of our like regular veg. We buy in, the stuff we buy in is like flour, rice, chocolate, oil, spices, salt, that sort of thing. It's hard to put a figure on how self-sufficient we are. I would say overall, I mean, like putting it in monetary terms, which is problematic in itself, we're probably like 95% self-sufficient in food. And then, I mean, like clothes and stuff is something different, isn't it? But like charity shops and that.
How important is self-sufficiency for you and living as independent as possible? What does it mean for you, and how far can you realize this goal of independency?
So self-sufficiency is quite important to me. I did a permaculture course about 17 years ago, and you know, at that time, ecological restoration and reducing the effects of climate change were super important to me. They were the only two things that I really cared about deeply. And in the permaculture course, it was kind of outlined how, you know, living together, living in community, living sustainably, living, sharing what we have. What would that look like in a city? So that might be that you have a garage at the end of each street that has the lawnmower in there, that has the tools in there, and everybody, you know, borrows it one or two items at a time to do their gardens. That's going to mean that we don't have economic growth. So, in the, you know, the model of economics that we have is absolutely the opposite of what we need to be doing in terms of resource extraction and in terms of reducing the amount of carbon. So that, you know, the two things are absolutely in opposition. So being in a community, we're a lot more able to be self-reliant, self-sufficient. There's a kind of a 1970s model of self-sufficiency that says basically do everything yourself. Make your shoes, make your toothbrush, make your clothes, grow your food, build your home. And we have Fahungle over at the other side of the valley, where John Seymour, who wrote the Self-Sufficient Bible in the 70s, that was an international bestseller, that was his area. We'd like to think that we've got a bit more of an evolved self-sufficiency that says, let's all create something that we're best at, but then share it locally. So, we don't need to be making the bread. A baker could do that down the road. We don't need to necessarily be having chickens and getting our own eggs. Somebody could focus on that next door. What we'd like to be is self-sufficient within our local ecosystem, our local area.
What I do is pinch at the top of the teat, like up high, and then work down. Yeah, so it's pinching, like locking the milk at the bottom, and then it gets trapped and comes out. Which looks easy, but you want to try just like that.
Okay.
You have to be quite firm. Right. It's like, yeah, that's it. Yeah. Yeah.
Not as easy as it seems.
No, it's like,
I want to hurt her.
it's hard. Yeah, but it's not hurting her.
Okay.
Because the kids will be like, boom, boom. And it's hard to, the direction as well. That's it. It's gonna.
Seemed to come out more when you did it.
Yeah, but I've been doing it more.
Was macht die Haltung von Ziegen so wertvoll und praktisch? Mehr dazu erfahren Sie in unserem Buch In Zukunft selbstversorgt. Wegweiser in ein autarkes Leben.
How do you think your children can benefit from experiences in Britt-de Mar, like nature, garden, self-sufficiency, and community?
And I think it really benefits them just that they're very confident with people of all ages. You know, many children are in a school system where they're only hanging out with people of their own age, whereas my children are hanging out with the adults that are here, and they're very confident when they talk to people of all ages, which is, you know, I think really important. And it's really important that they're getting a different view. You know, often children rebel against their parents and do the absolute opposite of what they do, but at least they've seen that there is an alternative to the mainstream paradigm of living in a house, getting a job and working all hours.
Wie wir von dem Familienvater hörten, kann der Aufenthalt in einer ökologischen Gemeinschaft Kindern also ganz besondere Prägungen mit auf ihren Lebensweg geben. Das befürwortet auch der ehemalige Physiklehrer Will. Er zog sich aus der regulären Arbeitswelt zurück, lebte nomadisch in seinem Van und kam dann ins Ökodorf.
So my name's Will. I came here, it'll be 2 years in November. Why am I here? I came here because I was a teacher. I was a teacher in a secondary school, teaching physics to all these kids, and I became aware at some point that because of the brokenness of our education system, I was complicit in the abuse of all these young people, which is like strong, but that's how it felt to me. And so I was converting a van with the intention of traveling around the UK, visiting intentional communities, or like trying out activism to see where my life was going to take me next. And then before I'd even finished converting the van, I fell into Extinction Rebellion. I did that full time for 2 years, just being an activist, did loads of amazing things with them, really enjoyed it. But it's very hard to do that sort of work full time for a long time, because, you know, your face is being rubbed in the total catastrophe that is like the ecological collapse. And so after 2 years of doing that, I decided to go back to the original plan of visiting intentional communities, and someone who I knew from XR suggested I started here. And I came expecting to stay for 2 weeks just as like a short-term volunteer, and I've never left.
What makes this the perfect place for you? Why did you stay? In a few words.
I feel at home here, like more than I've felt at home anywhere since, or for maybe like 15 years or so. Feel completely at home here.
Could you briefly compare van life and this kind of intentional community life?
Yeah, so comparing van life and intentional community, van life was great. I had a lovely time hanging out in my van in my tiny little space, my little home, and everything being there around me, and being able to just like go wherever I wanted, whenever I wanted. Like, that was brilliant. It was also very isolating, and like eventually left me feeling really lonely. And community life is like almost the exact opposite. Like, now I'm like embedded somewhere. I have a home. I'm living in a place that's got an actual foundation and isn't on wheels. I feel grounded, and I feel connected with the people around, and I feel a part of something. Totally different, also beautiful.
Do you have to pay rent here, or did you invest to be able to stay?
So all the members here pay rent. So it's kind of like we pay one bill every month, which covers the rent of our personal space, the rent of our communal spaces, the food that we eat as a group, you know, bills, council tax, that sort of thing.
And roundabout, may I ask how much it is?
Yeah, sure. So for me, I spend around £300 a month. And if I was going to be really, really stingy with myself and never drink any beer and not drive my van anywhere and not do anything else, I could survive entirely on that £300 a month.
what are your main businesses here?
So the things I'm mostly involved in here are sort of three main areas I'm mostly involved in. 3, 4. I'll start and we'll see how many it is. Group dynamics is my main thing. So I'm really involved in how the community operates in terms of like how the people work together. So conflict resolution, how we make decisions together, what the structure of the community is, helping us to do strategy, that sort of stuff. So that's group dynamics.
Living in a community is intense. It's, you know, it's not always laughter. It's not always easy, but it's about putting the time and the effort into the relationships and understanding that there will be bumps in the road. But I think that's true of any relationship. And one thing that I've really enjoyed about living at Brithdeer is the lack of judgment. When you make decisions, you don't have to justify it like I used to have to in my old life. Everybody is very supportive of the decisions that you make, and there's a real lack of judgment, which is very refreshing.
Okay, yeah, I think there's 6 more. So don't worry.
Outside, going on a bit along, you can spin it again. I know. All the way to. Oh my god.
In terms of COVID-19, I arrived here in between the 2 lockdowns. So we had 2 lockdowns in the UK. We had like the first one when I was living in my van, and then I arrived here between them, and then I had the second lockdown here. And again, like, felt so fortunate, like really felt like it didn't actually affect us very much because we're here anyway, and like we live in a community, so like I'm surrounded by all these people, like so fortunate. But again, like the COVID-19 crisis is another emergence of this deeper problem, because it's like come from all of these like the animal markets and forcing things together and like not stewarding, not seeing our place in nature. In terms of like vaccines and response to COVID and all of that sort of stuff that happened in the community, we're like a microcosm of what went on outside, right? So what was going on outside was also happening here, but we then have the benefit of being able to like really talk through things and discuss things together. What we did, and also there wasn't the intensity here, right? Because once again, we're like connected with each other anyway, and we've got like, we're able to be outside, like doing our work. It didn't affect us that much. We followed like government regulations and advice all through the pandemic. Even though there was like a range of different opinions about like whether that was a good thing or a bad thing to do within the community, whether the government were right to be asking us to do what they were doing or whatever, we followed it anyway. The vaccines issue, the more interesting, like, because I mean, like, I was a science teacher, right? So I've come from a place of like, vaccines good, science good, and like, for me to be exposed to some really different points of view here, instead of it being like, you know, from my place as a science teacher, like normally like the anti-vaccination point of view is seen as like crazy or cranky, or but like to actually be exposed to the point of view, an anti-vaccination point of view, which is actually probably the majority view in this area, and to like hear it from a load of people I really respect and like who think through things in like a really detailed way was very interesting to see, like, my stance on it soften.
It's been interesting since COVID. I suppose I've had a different outlook on self-sufficiency. And yeah, I'm scared. I'm a little bit scared. There seems to be some very unnerving themes emerging. And I feel like if some of those do start to play out, we're going to be in a very strong position here to look after our own needs. I feel like, economics and the government, our school system, is very interested in creating infants out, infantiling us. We're on the economic drip. We can't do anything for ourselves, so therefore we need to buy everything that we consume and buy everything that we need, because that keeps the economic growth. But that's not good for ecological restoration. So simplifying, having a lot less, reusing what we have, and creating, making from our local ecosystem the things that we need. So when I first came here, some people were still using gas, for instance. Now we only use wood that's from our land. And we do buy things in, of course. So for instance, our grain at the moment we're buying in, but we've just trialed growing grain. It's growing wheat on one of our fields. We think we're going to get about 1/2 ton. If that's successful, it's looking like it will be, then we will step that up next year and try and become self-sufficient for our grain as well.
Wir wollen die alte Pferdekoppel besuchen, von der ein Teil des Geländes mittlerweile dem Getreideanbau dient. Gleich treffen wir Jason Wood, der uns berichtet, mit welchen ungewöhnlichen Methoden die Menschen von Brith the Mar ihr eigenes Getreide anbauen. Sie betreiben eine regenerative Landwirtschaft. Was das bedeutet, erklärt uns Jason Wood im Interview.
So we're in the lake field, as it's called, because there's a lake there just behind you. And where I'm standing now is a field that we have grown wheat in. It's quite an unusual thing in that it's the first time the community has grown a cereal at scale. And it's also an attempt to do that following the principles of regenerative farming. So it's in that sense, it's quite an adventurous, it's quite exciting, and it's something new for the community. And I think the issues around growing cereals regeneratively is problematic. Because a lot of the reason why we have global warming is because we till soil, we plough it and we break up the soil, and that releases carbon into the atmosphere. And it also destroys the health of the soil because the microbial life and the fungal networks get broken up. And then that means that affects the water cycle so that the soils don't hold water in the same way. And you can have soils eroded, and you have nutrients being washed off into the waterways and down into the sea, and you can only really continue to grow a certain number of crops in that way when you're constantly tilling the soil, because ultimately you're always reducing the content of that soil. And so this is the beginnings of an attempt to grow wheat regeneratively.
Would you in one sentence define the word regenerative?
Yeah, it's about soil health, I think. It's about growing food in a way that is not just sustainable, it's not just maintaining the kind of, the sort of current situation that we're in and not contributing to global warming anymore, but it's actually about making things much better. So it's a return to thinking about soil health specifically, and how that soil can be built up, and that if you do that, that is a carbon sink. So you can take carbon, you can sequester carbon out of the atmosphere, and you can turn it into soil. And the thing is, as we build up the soils, then we can grow food on it. So we've got a population issue. There's going to be 9 billion people on the planet fairly soon, and ever increasing. How are we going to feed everybody? So this is a win-win situation. If we sort of move toward regenerative farming, we stop tilling the soil in the way that we have, we repair the soil, we let it heal, we let it build, we sequester carbon into it, we grow food in it, and we can do that relatively quickly. There's no other solution that we can do relatively quickly, relatively easily.
And very shortly, what are the techniques to do that?
So the techniques for regenerative agriculture, the primary one is to stop ploughing the soil in the way that we have been doing. If you turn over soil, you break the, there's no living roots, there's no plants with living roots in that soil. And when you don't have living roots in the soil, that doesn't build the microbial life in there, and it doesn't create the fungal networks. But if there are living roots in soil, then the fungal networks are there, the microbial life is there. Through photosynthesis, sugars are being taken down to the fungal networks. That's distributing it to the microbes. They are literally digesting stone, turning that into nutrients, making that available for the plants via the fungi. So you've got this reciprocal relationship. And all the time, carbon is being sequestered through that process into the soil, and that is also healing the water cycle. It can hold more water, and then when water is held through the evaporation of that water from the leaves, you get a cooling effect on the earth. So that's how atmosphere can be cooled. So, regenerative farming starts with stopping tilling the soil in the way that we have, not ploughing it, not turning it over to the depths especially that we have been turning it over, which just destroys the health of the soil.
So what alternative technique do you use to prepare the soil?
Yeah, well, that's where we are. We're just exploring that right now. So we did in effect till this soil, but we did it with pigs. And that does disturb the soil, and it has all the effects that I've just said, but it's not as extreme as literally ploughing. So initially this field, like the rest of this field, is pasture. And when you want to grow cereals in pasture, that's a problem, because you have to cultivate that land in some way in order to get the seed into the soil. So we didn't want to plough the land, because then we're going to destroy all of the health of that soil. So we had pigs in here, and they are doing the equivalent of cultivating it. So they are breaking the soil, and there's a compromise going on. So they are actually affecting the health of the soil, but not to the effect that ploughing would destroy the soil life. And then as soon as they had finished their job, we then cast the wheat grain onto that land. And we then there's a machine up there which I've forgotten what it's called, but it helps to get that grain into the soil, and then we took a roller over it, and then once those plants are growing, then you've got a living root in the soil, which is the important thing. You don't want to, once you've cultivated land and you've managed to start to grow cereals on that land, and you're not using it as pasture, then you've got to maintain that that work that you've initially done to cultivate it and not lose it. So this land now, it needs to have a cover crop on it, which means there's a living root in the soil, so you're maintaining the root structure, the soil structure, but you're also you're creating a situation where you can then grow, you can cast the grain and you can sow that grain for the next harvest without having to go through the same processes of cultivation, which are quite extreme. This is all we are learning all about this, and it's and experimenting with it, and there are farmers already doing this, growing wheat and other cereals in a regenerative way. But it's very challenging. It's easier. I mean, we know a lot about growing vegetables without tilling the soil, but growing cereals without tilling it's a bit more of an edge there, a bit more at a cutting edge. The wheat that we've grown here is called April Bearded, and it's a heritage variety of wheat. The wheat that's grown in fields now in conventional farming is very short to the ground. It doesn't have a long stalk. And that means that you can't use it for thatching, for example, in building roofs. We scythed about half of this field when we came to harvest it. And as you scythe it, you pick up the wheat and you collect it until you've got enough to tie it into what's called a sheaf. And then that sheaf is stacked together with maybe 4 others, and then that dries out, because you cut the wheat before it's fully ripened, because the threshing doesn't yet happen. Whereas a combine harvester cuts and threshes at the same time, we're using which is the short stalk, because this has a long stalk and it's a heritage variety. We are having to cut it and then leave it to ripen after it's cut. And threshing, well, we're buying a threshing machine which is pedal powered. Mm-hmm. So we're going to have a go at doing it without using any fossil fuels. But if that doesn't work, then we're going to borrow a threshing machine. And we will literally stick the ears of the corn, of the wheat, into that threshing machine. That will take off the seed, take out the seed from the ears, and then what's left we'll be able to give to somebody to use for thatching material.
Bald wird in Brith de Mar wieder Brot gebacken, und zwar aus dem eigenen Getreide. Ein süßes Brot, das mit getrockneten Früchten aus dem eigenen Garten gebacken wird, ist in Wales ein traditionelles Gericht zur Erntezeit.
Pre-Christian, there were 8 festivals during the year, and those festivals you had solstice and equinox, and then you had cross-quarter festivals, the ones between them. And we've just had Lammas, which relates to the sun, but we also had the full moon last night, which is Lunar Lammas, the nearest full moon to the Lammas festival. And so it's a time of celebration. It's harvesting, and an important moment in the cycle of the year that would have been much more in the forefront of our ancestors' minds as a way of celebrating the cycle of life.
there's obviously huge things going on at a national level, and like it is like hitting a lot of people incredibly hard. I count myself unbelievably fortunate to be in the situation that I'm in, living here and being kind of disconnected from that.
Während unseres mehrtägigen Rechercheaufenthalts in Brythia Mar befragen wir mehrere Bewohnerinnen und Bewohner des Ökodorfs, wie sie bisher mit Energiekrise, Inflation und Rezession zurechtgekommen sind.
The power companies are making astronomical profits, but everyone is paying, you know, twice as much on their food bill. I mean, just simple things like buying cat food was 90p a month ago, and now it's £1.50. So that's it's gone up by half in 2 months. We're cushioned from a lot of that because we're growing our own food. We are self-sufficient for so many areas, but it really worries me. You know, families living in cities already on the breadline. What are they going to do when we've got 15% inflation and food becomes even more expensive, and potentially, because it's been so dry on the continent, potentially food shortages over the winter period. That's it's quite an alarming proposition, and I don't see that, unfortunately, our government is doing anything about it. So we've got the two Conservative politicians looking to be the new leader, and neither of them have addressed the standard of living crisis.
Yeah.
For me, the energy crisis, as well as the cost of living crisis, the crisis in truth, in terms of like not knowing who to believe, this feeling like the environmental crisis, the ecological crisis, all these crises, they are all emergences of a greater problem, which is the stories we tell ourselves about our place in the world. So the story we've told ourselves for a very long time is that we are somehow apart from nature and more important than the rest of nature, and something special, and our unique role as humans is to somehow escape the world entirely and fly off to space eventually. You know, these are the stories we tell ourselves. And actually, all of these crises are offshoots of that core story, and it's the story that needs to change, where we recognise ourselves as an integral part of nature and a species with a very important role to play in terms of stewarding the world and like using our rational abilities and all of that sort of really amazing stuff that we've developed all the way through the Enlightenment. It's all really good stuff. We don't need to be going back to live in a cave, but we need to like rediscover all of this. Like, we need to use what we've learnt recently and combine it with some old wisdom about how about what our place in the world is.
Modernes Wissen und alte Weisheit sind hier in Wales wunderbar kombiniert. Inmitten wilder Natur, gleich neben einem uralten keltischen Steinkreis, hat die Gemeinschaft aus dem kleinen Dorf ein energieautarkes Zuhause für viele geschaffen. Wir wollen uns ansehen, auf welche Säulen die Menschen setzen, um sich nicht nur mit Nahrung, sondern vor allem auch mit Heizwärme und mit Strom rund ums Jahr selbst zu versorgen.
Self-sufficiency does the community have?
Sure. So in terms of how self-sufficient we are totally self-sufficient in terms of fuel and energy. So all of our heating and cooking is done on wood. We have solar panels and hydroelectric and wind turbine to produce all of our electricity. Another thing I'm really involved in is the woods. So I help manage the coppice here. We've got 13 acres of coppice, so I've been learning how to work in the coppice and harvest wood from there.
Are you into technical things about the energy production, or is it not your field?
I'm a little bit, in terms of energy production and that sort of thing, I'm a little bit into the technical side of things. I've got a good theoretical knowledge of it because of like my being a physics teacher and physics and all that sort of thing. But it's other people that are mostly involved in. So our electricity system, we've got 3 main inputs. We've got solar. So we've got a big solar array on top of our woodshed that's just behind me somewhere over there. So in summertime, that's our main source of electricity. That's only good over the summertime. In wintertime, it's mostly the hydroelectric system we've got, which is, you know, a diversion off a stream. Basically, we like take water from a stream down 2 pipes, but that stream is like, it runs during the winter but not during the summer. So over winter it's all about the hydro. The wind, our wind turbine, to be honest, is a bit rubbish, but it, like, you know, tops it up a little bit here and there, but it's mostly really the hydro and the solar. The hydro does like small amount of electricity 24/7 when it's working. The solar is like large amounts but only during the day, and then at night it drops. So we've then also got a battery bank made up out of, I think they're old forklift batteries, and they are what we use to get us over the nights and over days where it's not that sunny. Yeah.
So this is an example for upcycling and reuse of old batteries.
Yeah, so yeah, it's possible to reuse old batteries and to do upcycling of old batteries, but not always, because batteries tend to get thrown away when they reach the end of their lives. I mean, like, that is like a massively important thing to talk about, you know, with all of the rise of like electric vehicles and electric this and electric that, is like, where are the materials from these batteries coming from? And the answer to that is mostly from places like the Democratic Republic of the Congo, which are then being like, you know, torn apart in the West's rush for rare earth metals to build our batteries. Just moving everything over to keeping our same culture and just like swapping petrol for electric in cars, for instance, is not going to help anything. It's just going to lead to a bigger problem somewhere else. The problem is consumerism and the need for everyone to feel like they have to have a car.
What about your heating system?
So yeah, our heating system is all about wood. So we've got wood burners in every room. We do actually have radiators plumbed into our big wood burner in the kitchen, which heats all of our water, but I've never known them to be turned on, actually. Like, normally we just heat a room at a time.
Is it a hard job? I mean, you need to harvest the wood, cut it, and do you have to be there and always put more wood in the stove, or
Yeah.
how much work is it?
So in terms of the amount of work used to keep all of our fuel needs with the woods, yeah, it's a lot of work. So we have to go down to the woods, chop it up with a chainsaw, load it onto a trailer, bring the trailer back up, unload the trailer, chop it up some more, split it, stack it, leave it for a year, and then you take it and then you burn it. In terms of like looking after a fire, it's fine. It doesn't take that much energy to actually look after a fire once you've got it going, although you do have to be sweeping chimneys and fetching wood in from the woodsheds and that sort of thing. But yeah, the gathering and the stacking of wood is like a massive amount of work.
Do you have to get up early in the morning or at night to maintain the warmth in the room?
The heating?
So for the heating in the room, it's a big stone house. Basically, this house behind me is like a massive old stone house. So once you've got it up to temperature, it actually stays at temperature. So over the summer, it stays really cool inside, and over winter, once you've like if you go away for a week and you come back, it is cold and it takes a long time takes a few days to like get it properly warmed back up again. Once you've got it up to temperature, just like having a fire going every night just tops it up and it stays pretty warm basically.
Die weltoffene Gemeinschaft hat sich dem Low-Impact-Konzept verschrieben, was bedeutet, einen möglichst geringen Einfluss auf die Umwelt auszuüben. Im besten Fall ist die Präsenz des Menschen also kaum bemerkbar. Er fügt sich organisch in die Umgebung ein, statt sich diese zu eigen zu machen und sie zu belasten.
What about your waste and also used water?
So our used water, so in terms of waste and water and that sort of thing, human waste, we're compost loos or weighing on the compost pile. Wastewater, there's a septic tank on site somewhere. I'm not sure where actually, I've never found it. We just bring as little stuff that's going to turn into rubbish on site as possible. We recycle as much as possible. We're very, very careful about what we bring on site to reduce the amount that we're having to throw away. It's like the crucial part of it.
Die wilde Natur und die blühenden Gärten haben nicht nur einen praktischen Vorteil, zum Beispiel saubere Luft, Ruhe, gutes Wasser und Bodenfruchtbarkeit. Die Vorfahren hier auf der keltisch geprägten Insel wussten, dass unsere Beziehung zur Erde dem Menschen Glück, Heilung und Sinn im Leben verleihen kann. Mittlerweile ist das auch wissenschaftlich erforscht. Seit 1973 existieren Studiengänge, in denen unter anderem die sogenannte Gartentherapie gelehrt wird. Der Gärtner Nick Ward erzählt uns im Gespräch, welche Wirkung der tägliche Aufenthalt im Garten und am Waldrand auf ihn hat.
So, yeah, I feel really lucky to be living here. I have a lot of gratitude for being in West Wales and particularly on this land. This land really speaks to me. I mean, of course, the earth is sacred, but it feels particularly so here. It feels, like a temple. And my belief system is that, we're all spirits having a physical experience. And I went to see a plant spirit medicine guy who had a sacred fire and everyone could ask questions. And people said to him, you've been speaking to plants now for 30, 40 years. Is there one thing that you could tell us that, they keep repeating? Probably not. And he's like, oh, no, that's easy. The one thing the plants are saying is come back to paradise. That the whole of creation or the whole of Gaia is in paradise. And it's only us in our ego brains that have kind of left the party. And it's so lovely that we've been so horrible to the plants on this planet in terms of destroying ecosystems left, right and centre. But they're still saying, come back, So, yeah, when my wife left, there's a lot of sadness, and my job is I'm a self-employed gardener. So living in a glade of beautiful trees, living on this land and going to gardening, that was my therapy. I should have been paying my garden customers really, because I was in a bit of a bad way, quite down, and I got a lot of sustenance and a lot of healing through being surrounded by the natural world instead of the built environment. I think it's so important. I'd love to share this land with more people. So we did talk about, for example, inviting people who are burnt out doing eco-activism to come here for like recruitment weekends. In September, we've got some students who are doing an eco-psychology course. So we think we're separate from nature, but of course we aren't. But that separation is there for a lot of people. And I think the fruits of that is, the mental health crisis that we have. So I feel like my mental health is hugely helped by being in Wales and particularly on this land.
Wales ist ein einzigartiger Ort für ein Selbstversorgerprojekt. Nicht nur wegen seiner atemberaubenden Naturschönheit, sondern auch politisch gesehen. Das walisische One Planet Development Program unterstützt nämlich Privatleute, die einen hohen Grad an Kreislaufwirtschaft, Nachhaltigkeit und Selbstversorgung umsetzen. In Europa gibt es kaum etwas Vergleichbares. Dieses Förderprogramm wollen sich auch Sarah Jones und ihr Mann zunutze machen, wenn sie ihren Freiwilligendienst hier im Ökodorf beendet haben.
So before we came to Brithdir, we always intended to buy a piece of land and do the One Planet Development Scheme, which is a policy that the Welsh Government have introduced, and it only exists in Wales. It doesn't exist in England. So in order to do that One Planet development, we knew we had to move to Wales. So it was always our intention to buy a piece of land. We've actually bought a piece of land about an hour and a quarter east of here, so close enough that we can still come and visit. But what we want to do is move onto the land ourselves and grow our own veg and live a sustainable lifestyle and inspire people to do the same in the same way that Brithdir has inspired us. And that's really what it's about. It's about spreading that message of sustainability and making the little changes that then all add up into a bigger change.
Auf dem Stück Land, das Sarah Jones für ihr eigenes Selbstversorgerprojekt gewählt hat, steht bereits ein kleines Haus aus ökologischen Materialien wie Stein, Holz und Lehm, wie das im ländlichen Wales so üblich ist. Uns interessiert das Thema umweltfreundliches Wohnen und Bauen, zu dem ich als Journalistin und auch in unserem gemeinsamen Buch geschrieben habe. Bis zum Umzug lebt Sarah Jones mit ihrem Partner in Brithdir Mawr in einem Tiny House, auf kleinstem Raum. Wir fragen sie, wie sich das für sie anfühlt.
And so now we're in the cottage, which is around the back of the house, right by the garden, which is lovely. It's one room with a crog loft that we sleep in. And it's made me realise how little space you need in order to be happy. It's very cosy. Half of the room is a sitting room, the other half is a kitchen, but it suits us just fine.
And how is it to live between such old stone walls?
It's warm in the winter when you've had the wood burner on for 20 minutes, but it's lovely and cool in the summer. And you make friends with the little beasts that come and live with you. So we have a very friendly vole that likes to pop round. Also have some slugs, but you just kind of, you work with nature.
In fußläufiger Nähe zur Gemeinschaft von Brithdir Mawr besuchen wir die Rundhäuser von Faith und Tony Ranch. Sie leben hier für sich allein und das ganz autark. Die beiden wohnen hier wie zwei unauffällige Waldlebewesen. Aus der Vogelperspektive sind ihre Wohnräume kaum zu erkennen. Hierhin führt keine Autostraße, nur ein kleiner Waldweg. Auf dem Weg erkennt man erst auf den zweiten Blick, dass sich unter dem bewachsenen Hügel das Wohnzimmer der Familie Ranch befindet. Ihre 3 selbstgebauten Rundhäuser sind mit grünem Strom und Holzöfen versorgt. Zudem haben sie einen ertragreichen Selbstversorgergarten. Ganz detailliert schreiben wir darüber in unserem Buch. Der leider verstorbene Clemens Awey wünschte sich wie ich ebenfalls, diese Art von Wohnhaus einmal nachzubauen. In der Fortsetzung zu diesem Film lade ich Sie ein, uns auf unserem Besuch bei den ökologischen Rundhäusern in ganzer Länge zu begleiten. Ich hoffe sehr, dass Ihnen dieser Film gefallen hat und viel weiterführendes Wissen und Inspirationen finden Sie in unserem Buch In Zukunft selbstversorgt – Wegweiser in ein autarkes Leben.
Wir alle möchten günstige und gesunde Lebensmittel, bezahlbare Energie, Krisensicherheit und vor allen Dingen auch unsere Umwelt schützen. Das alles können wir durch mehr Selbstversorgung erreichen. Mit diesem Buch lernen Sie anhand vieler konkreter Tipps, wie Sie Ihre Zukunft und die Ihrer Kinder nachhaltig und kostengünstig gestalten können.